organized the church from headquarters at Cleveland, Tennessee. And now we've got a big building there now to hold several people, and got us a new auditorium. And we have church there now regular. And when we left Mount Zion and the Church of God was being preached in here, why, the house wasn't fitting to have a church in, so we built us a church. And it didn't stand but a little while till somebody burned it. And then we wouldn't do without it for a little while. We just built another one and established the Church of God there. And we had to go and have Sunday school some before we could get our church built. We rented an old house that was had been vacated for some time. We went there and established the church, set it in order, and then we built our church where it stands now. It stands not too far from Mount Zion. And then we got our Sunday school started, and we organized it while we were still in the old building where we had rented. And then after we got back in the new house, we went to having church, and they decided they'd stop us from having church there. A lot of people was against it, that way of living. Hadn't been used to it. And so we have church there, and some nights there'd be a mob drive up out on the public road in front of the building, and they was wanting to get a hold of the preacher. We had a preacher from Cleveland, Tennessee there preaching, and they wanted to get a hold of him and give him a good beating. So that a lot of the men that was just outsiders, they didn't belong to the church, but they'd bring their guns, and there'd be 2 or 3 men sitting in the front of the church back there where they come in with their guns across their lap. And I'm sure if anything had happened around there, there'd have been trouble this time, sure enough. But they didn't nobody ever try to tear in or nothing, but they did want to get a hold of this preacher. So when they got ready to send him back to Cleveland, there's one man carried him in a wagon up about 7 miles to another station on the railroad and put him on the train up there. They knew they couldn't come back through Red Bay. They'd get him and maybe beat him up, and he had his daughter with him, and no telling what all he'd have done for him. But they got it on him by carrying him to this other station. They didn't get to find him. Then after they burned this church, we built another one, and it's just a plank church. The first one we had there, we just had blocks sawed off the trees, about something like 18 inches high or something like that, and put a plank across it, and that was our seat for a while. So we finally decided we'd get us some benches, or make them. We just had the lumber sawed and made the benches. Of course, they wasn't padded or nothing like they are these days. But we kept on until we got the people, I reckon, to knowing that we was going to stay there anyway, regardless of what they done. And they quit bothering us too bad. And when we was having this revival, they didn't bother us for a while, and they preacher decided he wanted to preach on the streets here in Red Bay, and they announced that he'd preach here on Saturday evening. And when they got there and the preacher got up to preach, why, somebody got across the street on top of a house and throwed a lot of eggs on us over there. Got eggs all over the clothes of the people that's there listening, and so the law didn't do nothing about it. And he announced that he'd preach again the next Saturday. That was during the revival we was having there. So when they got up and started preaching, why, this car drove up out there, and maybe he hadn't got started preaching. The car drove up, and they thought that there was a mob in it wanting to get him again, and so he called the police around there and asked him. He said, "What do you think I ought to do?" And the police told him, says, "Let us call the sheriff down here from Russellville." So they called the sheriff down there, and the sheriff come down there and told them, said, "Well, the town is kind of in an uproar." Said, "I believe if I was you, I'd just not preach." Said, "Just come to Russellville, and you can preach all you want to on the streets there." And so he postponed that time, didn't preach there. But the mob just got worse then, as long as the revival went. But there was never nobody hurt or nothing. And then we decided, and I believe it's maybe about eight or 10 years from then, we decided we'd overhaul our church and make us some benches, have better seats than what we had, and so we did, and the church grew from then on until it got to a number of about almost 100, I guess, in roll that joined the church, and they had their headquarters for the state of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, and we would get, we deeded our lot and church to the place down there in Jackson, Mississippi. And ever since then, why, our headquarters for this Oak Grove Church has been down there at Jackson. Of course, the real headquarters still at Cleveland, Tennessee.